The story of the great man called Obadele. The story goes thus. When shadows rise, the sun beat down fiercely on the fertile fields of Akina, its golden light painting the yam mounds in a warm glow. Obadele stood tall and proud, wiping the sweat from his brow as he surveyed the harvest that sprawled before him. This season had been generous, the earth responding to his toil with the promise of prosperity. Every yam in those heaps was a testament to his strength, skill, and unyielding determination. A sharp contrast to his father Olisa's gentle hands, more used to strumming the flute than digging the soil. Obadele's broad chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. His dark eyes scanned the distant village where smoke curled from the thatched roofs. Women sang in the marketplace, their voices mingling with the rhythmic pounding of drums announcing the coming festival of the new yam. "Obadele!" a voice called, breaking his reverie. Turning, he saw Amaka, his favorite wife, approaching with a child at her side. The boy's skin was soft like the river mud after the rains, his eyes bright with curiosity. Tunde, the son of a brother lost long ago, now part of Obadele's household by ancient customs. "Come, the elders wait for you," Amaka said with a smile. "The festival begins at dusk." Obadele nodded, adjusting the heavy spear strapped across his back. To lead the warriors of Akina and be celebrated among his people was the honor he had fought for all his life. As they walked toward the heart of the village, voices whispered and children darted away to hide behind baskets. Respect, yes, but also a trace of fear. Obadele's temper was quick, and his wrath was the stuff of stories. Yet no one could deny that he was the pillar on which the village rested. At the gathering place, the elders sat in solemn council. Obadele took his place beside them, feeling the weight of their eyes and the legacy he bore. The Yam Festival was more than a celebration. It was a reminder of their bond with the earth, the ancestors, and each other. That night, as drums echoed beneath the stars, Obadele's gaze lingered on the distant river, where the forest thickened and the unknown waited. The world was changing, he could feel it in his bones, but tonight he would celebrate his people, his strength, and the power he had carved from the soil. Narwan, the shadow of the past. The morning after the festival dawned cool and bright, but the joy from the night before still lingered like smoke in the air. Obadele sat outside his hut, sharpening his spear, his mind restless despite the steady rhythm of the village waking around him. Tunde came running up, breathless and wide-eyed. "Father, Kenichi is calling you near the river. He found something strange." Obadele grunted and stood, muscles coiling beneath his skin. His son Kenichi was younger, more thoughtful and quieter than Tunde. The son Obadele both admired and feared. The boy's softness was a reminder of what Obadele had tried so hard to escape, the weakness of his own father, Olisa. By the riverbank, Kenichi knelt beside a cluster of smooth stones, his fingers tracing strange symbols etched into their surfaces. "Look," he said, "these were not here before." Obadele frowned, crouching beside his son. The symbols were unfamiliar, angular, unlike any of the traditional carvings of Akina. "Traders from the north?" Obadele asked, his voice low. Kenichi nodded. "They passed by 2 suns ago. They spoke of new gods and ways. The elders say we should not listen, but..." Obadele's jaw tightened. Change had always been the enemy of strength. The old ways had built Akina, and he would defend them with every breath. But in the back of his mind, the whispers of doubt grew louder. Could the shadows creeping from beyond the river bring ruin or salvation? That evening, as the village gathered around the fire, Reverend Turner arrived with a small group of travelers. Clad in unfamiliar robes and carrying books, they spoke of peace and a new way to live, a message both intriguing and threatening. Obadele watched them from the shadows, his spear resting beside him. His world was shifting, and the ground beneath his feet felt less certain than ever. On the blood debt, the midday sun hung heavy over Akina when the council drum sounded. 3 deep, slow beats that sent a ripple through the village. It was a call for judgment. Something grave had happened. Obadele strode into the meeting square, his face like carved stone. A crowd had already gathered, murmuring and shifting anxiously. At the center, 2 elders stood beside a trembling boy from the neighboring village of Umugo. His hands were bound, and a thin cut bled from his cheek. One of the elders raised his staff. The boy's father struck down a priest of Ani during a boundary dispute. Blood has touched sacred ground. Gasps echoed. To spill blood on Ani's land, the earth goddess who watched over the Berry people, was the gravest of sins. The gods demanded reparation. Obadell's heart sank. He knew what must come next. The spirits ask for justice, the elder continued. The boy Tunde is the payment. Tunde, Obadell stepped forward. This is madness, he growled. He is a child. His father is the offender. The elder's voice was calm. And his father is dead. The gods have spoken. Obadell turned to the council, his voice rising. We dishonor ourselves by spilling innocent blood. But the village would not move. The gods' will, as interpreted by the priesthood, had never been questioned. And though Obadell was respected, he was not beyond tradition. That evening, the skies turned gray as Tunde was led to the sacred grove. Obadell walked beside him in silence. The boy clutched his hand, eyes wide with fear, but lips sealed shut, as if he knew that no protest could save him. At the edge of the forest, Obadell stopped. His grip tightened around Tunde's fingers, then slowly released. I will not strike, he whispered. Another warrior stepped forward. Tunde did not cry out. When the deed was done, Obadell returned to his hut and smashed his spear against the ground until it shattered. That night, Kenichi found him sitting in the dark, unmoving. We are not gods, Father, Kenichi said. We should not act as if we are. Obadell said nothing, but something in him cracked that night. Something deeper than rage. Something like faith. 7 seasons. The sun had barely risen when the drums of judgment sounded again, low and mournful. Obadell stood before the council of Ikena, not as a warrior or hero, but as a transgressor. During a funeral rite 2 nights before, Obadell's old musket misfired. The bullet struck Ezembeku, a titled elder, killing him instantly. It was an accident, but in Ikena, there were no true accidents when sacred rites were involved. The blood of the elder has defiled the land, the priest of Ani declared. Obadell must leave Ikena for 7 planting seasons. Imaka wept, but Obadell did not beg. He knelt, touched the earth with both hands, and rose with the dignity of a chief. That same day, he took his wives, children, and what he could carry, and crossed the river to his mother's homeland, the village of Ndale. Ndale was quiet, built on red hills that sloped toward dense groves of coconut trees. Obadell was received without warmth but with obligation. His mother's people could not refuse him. They gave him land near the edge of the village, where the earth was rocky and reluctant. Still, Obadell farmed. He built huts from the clay with his own hands. His sons helped. Even Kenichi, who had grown taller and more silent since Tunde's death, worked beside him. But exile planted more than crops. It planted questions. The missionaries had arrived in Ndale too, Reverend Turner and his followers, now building a small chapel with mud bricks and singing strange songs in the mornings. They spoke of peace, forgiveness, and a God who needed no sacrifices. Some laughed, others listened. Kenichi listened most of all. One evening, Obadell saw him sitting with the missionaries under a kola tree, reading from a book with careful eyes. Obadell said nothing, but his fist clenched like iron. What was a father to do when his son reached for the fire? Return to dust. When the 7th season passed, Obadell's beard had grown silver around the edges. His muscles remained strong, but a shadow lived behind his eyes. The people of Ikena welcomed him back with caution, not celebration. The village had changed. The white men had come, not just preachers now, but men in uniform with orders, books, and laws. A court had been built. Some of Ikena's sons had become messengers for the foreign chiefs. Others wore foreign clothes, spoke in foreign tongues. The gods' shrines were still standing, but they were no longer feared. Obadell's compound had been burned in his absence. He rebuilt it, but it felt smaller. His titles, once envied, now seemed to gather dust. Even Amaka had changed, more tired, less patient. And Kenichi was no longer a boy. He wore white robes on Sundays now. He prayed with the others and sang hymns. He refused to bow to the elders, and he called the gods of his father empty. The final straw came when Kenichi refused to partake in the festival of Ani. "I cannot kneel to idols," he said simply. Obadel struck him across the face. "I gave you life," he roared. "You shame me." But Kenichi did not cry. He stood straight and left, not returning that night or the next. The breaking Ikena was crumbling from within. The converts had built their own quarter near the river. They followed the foreigners' laws, refused ancestral rites, and reported traditional punishments to the colonial court. When Obadele and a group of elders destroyed the sacred Osu compound that had become a Christian meeting hall, they were arrested. They were forced to march in chains, beaten with whips, and held without food in the sun. Obadele had faced war, beasts, and gods, but never humiliation like this. After their release, the elders gathered at night, whispering of rebellion. Obadele led them. They struck in the dark, burning a section of the court hut and cutting down a convert who had once been a drummer in Ikena. But the next morning, soldiers arrived. Not many, just 6 men with rifles and orders. They arrested 3 elders. Obadele was not among them. Instead, he returned home, sat in his hut, and sharpened his machete slowly, deliberately. He did not speak to Amaka. He did not wait for Kenichi, who had not returned since their last fight. He walked into the forest. There, beneath the twisted ugba tree where Tunde had once been buried, Obadele fastened a rope of vine. The next morning, a hunter found him, hanging in silence, a man broken by a world that no longer wanted him. Have you clicked on the subscription button? Do that now for more videos coming up. Now the final report. Reverend Turner stood near the edge of the forest, looking down at the body that had been cut from the tree. "It is a terrible shame," he said quietly. The district commissioner arrived shortly after, frowning at the mess. "Why didn't they bury him?" "He died by his own hand," Turner replied. "Their laws forbid it." The commissioner scribbled notes in his book. "I'll include this in my report on native justice," he said. "Perhaps a paragraph or 2, a strong example of resistance to progress." He paused, then added, "What was his name again?" Turner hesitated. "Obadele," he said. "He was once the strongest man in Ikena." The commissioner nodded, already turning away. "Yes, that'll make a fitting conclusion." As the sun dipped below the trees, the village of Ikena carried out the quiet burial. No drumming, no rites, no mourners from the convert quarter. Only Amaka remained behind after the others left, her fingers tracing the earth gently, as if it could still feel him. These brought to an end to the story Moral Lessons from When Shadows Rise 1. The dangers of inflexibility. Obadele's downfall stems from his inability to adapt. While strength and tradition made him a great man, his refusal to change, even when change became necessary, ultimately destroyed him. Lesson: strength is not just about standing firm, but also knowing when to bend without breaking. 2. Pride can become a prison. Obadele's pride in his manhood, status, and beliefs blinds him to the emotional needs of his family, especially his son Kenichi. He sees compassion as weakness and loses the people he loves most. Lesson: true greatness includes humility, empathy, and the ability to listen. Third-generational gaps must be bridged with understanding. Kenichi seeks meaning in a changing world, but his father sees only rebellion. Their failure to understand each other reflects a broader generational disconnect. Lesson: every generation must strive to understand the other. Tradition needs conversation, not confrontation. 4. Cultural identity is both precious and fragile. The story shows how easily a culture can be destabilized when it isn't prepared to face foreign influence, but it also shows that no culture is perfect or unchanging. Lesson: protect your roots but examine them. Culture must evolve with wisdom to survive. 5. Violence isn't always power. Sometimes it's powerless. Obadele uses force and fear to assert himself, but in the end, neither saves him or his community. His final act of rebellion is not one of strength, but of despair. Lesson: the most lasting power comes not from fear, but from unity, wisdom, and vision. 6. Silencing the past dooms the future. When the colonial commissioner reduces Obadell's complex life to a footnote, it shows how history can be erased or rewritten by outsiders. Lesson: telling your own story is essential, or someone else will write it for you. If you found these stories interesting, click on the subscription button for more. Thank you.